You've lived long enough to know this. The more people know about you, the more they think they can define you. But you're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to protect your peace. In this video, we'll talk about 5 things you don't need to share. Not because you're hiding, but because your peace is worth more than their opinion. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Your health conditions and medical history. As we age, health becomes one of the most personal and vulnerable parts of our lives. Doctor visits become more frequent. Medications pile up. The body begins to slow down in ways we didn't expect. And naturally, we want to talk about it, especially with friends who might be going through the same thing. But here's something we often forget. Not everyone needs to know what you're going through, and not everyone deserves to. There's a fine line between sharing for support and oversharing out of habit or loneliness. When we speak too openly about our health, it can sometimes change how others see us. They may mean well, but suddenly you're no longer John from bowling league. You're the guy with heart problems. Or you become the topic of a sentence that starts with, "Did you hear what happened to..." Let me share a story. Nancy, 67, was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's. She told a neighbor she trusted. Within weeks, people at church were offering unsolicited advice, giving her sad looks, or avoiding her entirely. One even said, "I didn't think you'd be able to come today." That moment stayed with her. What she shared in confidence ended up reshaping how people treated her. The truth is, when we talk about our illnesses too freely, people may begin to define us by them, even if they don't mean to. You become the diagnosis instead of the whole person you still are. In Buddhist thought, our identity is not fixed. We are not just our body. We are not just our symptoms. We are awareness. And that awareness deserves dignity. So before you share medical details, ask, will this help me feel better or just make me feel exposed? Will it create connection or make others treat me differently? Am I sharing to be understood or just to fill the silence? You have every right to keep your health private, not out of shame, but out of self-respect. Protect your energy, speak when it feels safe, and remember, some parts of your healing journey are sacred, and sacred things are best guarded gently. Sometimes healing begins not in the telling, but in the quiet trust you build within yourself. Chapter 2. Your personal struggles and emotional pain. Have you ever opened up to someone about something deeply personal, only to walk away feeling more exposed than supported? As we get older, life doesn't get easier. In fact, it often gets heavier. The loss of loved ones, health issues, retirement stress, adult children, loneliness, or even just the quiet ache of getting older. These things weigh on the heart. It's natural to want someone to listen, but not everyone who listens has your best interest at heart. In Buddhist wisdom, there's a simple truth. Just because something is true doesn't mean it must be spoken to everyone. Sometimes we share too much of our pain, hoping someone will help carry it, but instead we end up feeling judged, pitied, or worse, ignored. The truth is, most people are too wrapped up in their own lives to offer the depth of empathy we really need, and some might even use what you share against you. This doesn't mean you have to bottle up everything, but it does mean choose your listeners wisely. Ask yourself, is this person truly capable of holding my story with care? Will they understand me, or will they just offer empty advice? Are they safe, or are they simply curious? In Buddhist mindfulness, awareness is everything. Before we speak, we pause. We breathe. We feel into whether this is the right time, the right person, and the right reason. You deserve support, but not all support is kind, and not all kindness is real. Instead of sharing your deepest pain with everyone, consider keeping it sacred. Share it with someone who has earned your trust, someone who listens with the heart, not just the ears. Sometimes peace comes not from what we say, but from knowing when to stay quiet. Chapter 3. Your financial situation. Money is a deeply personal topic, especially as we get older. At this stage of life, finances can feel more uncertain than ever. Maybe you've retired, or you're planning to. Maybe you're living on a fixed income, managing medical expenses, helping your children, or wondering how long your savings will last. These are real, valid concerns. But here's something we often overlook. Talking too much about money doesn't always bring support. It can bring pressure, judgment, and even jealousy. Sometimes we mention our pension, our retirement fund, or the sale of a house, thinking it's just conversation. But people listen differently when it comes to money. They may start to assume things about what you can afford, what you should be doing with your money, or even whether you owe them something. Let me share a story. Tom, 68, casually mentioned during lunch with old friends that he'd finally paid off his mortgage and was thinking about traveling a bit. The next week, one of those friends reached out asking for a loan, saying, "You're in a good place now, right?" Tom was caught off guard. His financial success, once shared in joy, had turned into an invitation for others to cross boundaries. That's the problem. Once people know what you have, they start to expect things. Some may admire you, others may envy you. Some might treat you better, while others keep score. And sadly, a few may try to take advantage of your generosity. In Buddhism, one teaching reminds us, when you have less attachment to possessions, you have more freedom. But to protect that freedom, you must also protect your privacy. Before sharing details about your income, investments, or expenses, ask yourself, will this help deepen my connection with someone, or just complicate it? Am I sharing because I want advice, or am I seeking validation? Is this really their business to know? You have nothing to prove. You don't owe anyone a full financial report. Your worth isn't measured by your bank account. The peace that comes with quiet stability is far more valuable than the fleeting attention that comes from flashy numbers. Let your financial health be your strength, not your story. Tushra chapter 4. Your private relationships and family issues relationships are one of the most sacred parts of life, and also one of the most complicated. Whether you've been married for decades, are newly divorced, widowed, or dating again after many years, one truth remains. Your personal life is yours to protect. In today's world, we often feel the pressure to share everything on social media, with friends, or in casual conversations. But when it comes to love, family dynamics, or personal struggles at home, sharing too much can open the door to unwanted judgment and interference. You might post a picture with your spouse, and someone comments, "You two look so happy." But behind closed doors, things may not be so simple. Or maybe you mention a disagreement with one of your adult children, and suddenly everyone has an opinion on what you should do. Let me share a story. Linda, 64, had recently started seeing someone new after years of being alone. She was excited, hopeful, and like many of us, she shared her happiness on Facebook. But soon old friends began prying. "Is it serious? Aren't you moving too fast?" Even her children voiced concerns. What started as joy quickly turned into stress, all because too many people had access to something that should have been private. That's the danger of overexposing your personal life. You allow others to shape the story of your relationships, even when they know only a fraction of the truth. Buddhism teaches that true peace comes from within, not from validation or approval outside of us. The deeper your relationship, the more sacred it becomes. And the more sacred something is, the less it needs to be exposed. So before you share something about your partner, your marriage, or your children, ask yourself, is this for connection, or am I just seeking attention? Will this invite support or opinions I never asked for? Will sharing this help me or hurt the people I love? You don't owe the world an explanation for your choices in love or family. Some things are meant to be lived, not broadcast. Let your heart speak quietly. Let your home be your refuge, not a stage. Chapter 5. Your past regrets and mistakes. By the time we reach our 50s, 60s, or 70s, we've all lived through a lot. We've made decisions we're proud of, and some we're not. We've hurt others. We've been hurt. We've walked through seasons of loss, regret, and lessons learned the hard way. It's part of being human, and sometimes we feel the urge to share our past, maybe to explain ourselves, to seek forgiveness, or simply to connect. But here's the truth. Not everyone deserves to know your full story. You don't need to unpack your worst moments for someone to respect you. You don't need to confess your regrets in order to be whole. Your past is a teacher, not a cage. Take a look at the story of Martha Stewart. She was once a symbol of success, a strong, creative, and powerful woman in the fields of media, homemaking, and business. But in 2004, at the age of 60, she was convicted for insider trading and served 5 months in prison. Many thought it would be the end of her reputation and career, but it wasn't. Martha Stewart didn't let her past define who she was. After her release, she rebuilt her brand, returned to television, wrote books, and even partnered with Snoop Dogg in a popular cooking show. Her story isn't just about making a mistake, it's about how she rose after the fall. She didn't deny her past, but she also didn't let it hold her back. In Buddhism, the past is not our identity. The present moment is what holds power. We are not who we were, we are who we are becoming. So before you bring up an old mistake or painful chapter, ask yourself, will this bring healing or just reopen wounds? Is this person wise enough to hold my story without judgment? Am I sharing to grow or to carry guilt I no longer need? Your story is sacred, and you get to choose which parts to reveal and which parts to keep between you and your own heart. Let your growth speak louder than your regret. Let your life today shine brighter than your past. You don't owe the world your whole story, not your wounds, not your past, not your private life. Keeping things to yourself isn't selfish. It's wise, it's sacred, because peace doesn't come from being known. It comes from knowing yourself and protecting what matters most. Thank you for being here. Stay quiet, stay grounded, stay kind.